We live in an age where CGI computer-generated images are cheaper than bread. Millions of people all over the planet are struggling to survive in terrible conditions, barely making it to paycheck. At this moment, world wars are taking place in different parts of the world, and here at the same time, on the international stage, space plays are being played out. August 2023. India proudly declares, "We are the first in history to land on the moon's south pole." That same year, Russia launches Luna 25, only to crash a few kilometers short of the surface. January 2024, Japan proudly announces a successful lunar landing. True, the lander came to rest upside down, but who cares about such minor details? Not to be left out of the lunar hype, NASA launched Artemis back in 2022. No crew, but what a show! Cameras, simulations, virtual control panels, everything perfectly staged. Loud headlines follow. India lands on the moon. Japan completes successful touchdown. Russia rejoins the lunar race. But here's the real question. What do we actually see? Animations, simulations, press releases, and applause. All set against footage that, to put it politely, raises more eyebrows than excitement. We live in times when it's hard to tell a real moon landing from a sci-fi movie trailer. And often, the movies do it better. Because when you're spending hundreds of millions, the least you can do is make it look convincing. This video isn't about technological triumph. It's about common sense, about how easily public perception can be shaped when fairy tales are served with a scientific breakthrough label. Welcome to the place where belief ends and breakdown begins. Over the last few years, we've entered a brand new phase of the moon race. Except this time, it's not astronauts and engineers taking the lead, it's budgets, PR teams, contracts, and high-end render farms. Let's take a moment to see who joined the cast of this cosmic production. India, Chandrayaan 3, a proud lunar landing set against the backdrop of crumbling roads and a nationwide toilet reform. In 2023, while millions across India continue to live below the poverty line, the country marked a historic milestone, a successful touchdown of Chandrayaan 3 on the moon. There were cheers, waving flags, and proud interviews from top officials. And sure, on the surface, it looked like a major national achievement. But zooming out a bit, things get more complicated. Originally, the mission was supposed to cost around $10 million. By the time it was done, the final bill came out to roughly $75 million. That might still sound like a bargain by space standards. But when you remember that back in 2014, India had to launch a nationwide campaign just to build public toilets, the contrast becomes hard to ignore. For a long time, millions of people had no choice but to relieve themselves outdoors. So naturally, the question arises, maybe, just maybe, we should clean up a bit down here before heading off planet? To be fair, over 100 million toilets have been built since then, but the overall quality of life still leaves a lot to be desired. And judging by the government's focus, space seems to rank higher on the priority list than clean water or basic infrastructure. But all right, let's talk about the mission itself. August 2023. The Indian Space Research Organization, ISRO, proudly announces, "We are the first in history to land on the moon's south pole." And while global media erupts in excitement, the audience is shown a polished 3D animation. Real footage? No, just a simulation. Video of the descent? Not available. Camera feed from the lander? Well, there are a couple of still images released after the successful landing. As they say, just take our word for it. The Vikram lander allegedly made a smooth touchdown, and the small Pragyan rover began its triumphant journey across the surface. But here's the catch. The actual landing process was never shown. First comes the animation, then poof! The lander is already standing on the lunar surface, like something straight out of a PlayStation 2 cutscene. Officially, Chandrayaan 3 was labeled a low-budget mission, in quotes, a mere $75 million. For comparison, a Hollywood blockbuster can cost more. But if we dig a little deeper, where exactly did that money go? Roughly 500 engineers worked on the project. The equipment included spectrometers, cameras, and a handful of scientific instruments. The Pragyan rover, a small-wheeled machine, was meant to travel across the moon's surface. So here's the question. With all those specialists involved, why was there no proper video broadcast of the landing? Why, more than half a century after Stanley Kubrick's Apollo 11 masterpiece, are we still being asked to believe in lunar miracles without a shred of visual proof? If we set aside the hype, Chandrayaan 3 was, at its core, a political and image-driven project. A chance to say, we can do it too, to show the public a great success, and maybe shift attention away from domestic issues. But here's the interesting part. Back in 2019, India's previous mission, Chandrayaan 2, failed to make a soft landing. The spacecraft crashed into the lunar surface, so 4 years later, it's likely that Indian authorities wanted to lift national morale and avoid another embarrassment. And that leaves us with the final question. Was it a real landing or just a very successful PR stunt? In any case, all of this still leaves us with more questions than answers. Where's the full video footage of the landing? Why does it all look like a cutscene from an old game console? And why would a country facing massive social challenges decide that slicing up a space budget is more important than the well-being of its own citizens? Maybe someday we'll get real evidence of this landing. Until then, all we can do is take their word for it or just wait for the next 3D animation. Now, let's hop over to another continent in our strange and fascinating world. Back in the States, Intuitive Machines, a lunar startup on a budget. In 2024, NASA decided it was time to bring private companies into the moon game and launched a mission called Odysseus. For this mission, they chose a Texas-based startup called Intuitive Machines, a small company with just 250 employees and some very big dreams. The NASA contract? A modest $118 million. Launch vehicle? Of course, Falcon 9 by SpaceX. Reliable as ever. Equipment? Laser altimeters, cameras, scientific sensors, the usual checklist. Landing? In quotation marks. Successful. Well, the lander tipped over on its side. Apparently, there wasn't enough budget for one more gyroscope, or maybe just a better set of stabilizers. Communication? Unstable. Landing video? Why bother? At least the render looked great. But NASA decides that one module falling sideways is not enough. And so a new project was born. On February 27, 2025, Intuitive Machines launched its second mission, IM-2, under the name Athena Nova C. But this time, it's not just a lunar lander, it's a lunar lander with 4G. The mission came with a rover called MAPP, built by Lunar Outpost, designed to explore the area around the landing site. Meanwhile, crawling over the rover was supposed to be a robot called Ant, developed by MIT, a bug-sized box meant to measure one very critical thing, the temperature, on top of the rover. And the cherry on top, a mysterious solar-powered bouncing ball named Micro Nova Hopper. As for the contract, the full budget wasn't disclosed, but Nokia received over $14 million from NASA to deliver the first lunar LTE base station. Launch vehicle? Take a wild guess! Of course, Falcon 9 once again, courtesy of SpaceX. The equipment list: a lunar drill to mine ice and test if cocktails can ever be made here. A 4G transponder so you can tweet from the crater. Various scientific instruments to write in a press release. Mission goal? Officially, testing LTE connectivity on the moon. Unofficially, giving astronauts the ability to Google what to do if the module lies sideways again. Landing? During descent, the lander fell into a crater and once again tipped on its side, which made it impossible to deploy the solar panels and complete the mission. By March 7th, 2025, after the batteries drained, all communication was lost. Footage? Yes, this time we actually got a video of the landing. Though a few viewers reported a strange sense of déjà vu, because if Earth struggles to maintain a good signal, what hope is there for the moon? So, billions of dollars, piles of hardware, crowds of experts, and what do we get in the end? Renders, promo clips, and sometimes just silence. Welcome to the Moon Race 2.0, where it's not about what you did but how you made it look. The year is 2025. The next hero in the lunar race is Blue Ghost, an ambitious mission with a big name. Not Apollo, not Artemis, not Odysseus, just Blue Ghost. But if you take a closer look, this mission has quite a lot of ghosting going on. The first red flag appears already during the official broadcast. The video looks, let's just say, budget CGI. And considering even free video editing apps today can produce more realistic animation, that already raises some eyebrows. Look closely. The moon in the footage looks oddly small, as if the lander isn't descending onto Earth's satellite, but rather onto a decorative dinner plate. The movement feels strange too, as if we're not watching an actual physical object, but something rendered on fast forward. But things get really interesting when the lander itself enters the frame. Blue Ghost appears in all its partial glory, a foil-wrapped frame that vaguely resembles old-school Apollo 11. Sure, NASA has proven many times that thermal insulation foil can look like this, but here it feels more inspired by potato chip packaging than aerospace design. Yeah, the foil reflects the lunar surface. We get it, but that's not exactly a win. Then comes the best part, the landing itself. Everything seems to go by the book. The module descends, gets closer to the surface, and suddenly starts to shake, as if a gust of wind had picked it up like a feather in a wind tunnel. That wasn't a landing, that was a lunar seizure. There's no atmosphere on the moon, so where did those frantic vibrations come from? Did NASA think the audience would get bored unless the footage wobbled? Fine, let's go with it. The lander touches down and clouds of dust puff into the air. Makes sense, the thrusters should be kicking up clouds of lunar dust. But here's the thing. The dust goes up and immediately settles back down, almost like someone up there just flipped the hover effect switch to off. But officially, lunar gravity is 6 times weaker than Earth's. There's a vacuum, no atmosphere. All of this should mean the dust hangs in the air much longer. Yet, in this video, it settles faster than it would on Earth. Why? Animation glitch again? And if you're thinking, okay, maybe that's enough questions, hold on. The real fun is just beginning. We're shown the lander drilling into the moon's surface. Harmless enough, right? Drill spins, dirt flies, engineers smile. But if you look closely, you'll see something odd. The bits of lunar soil fly and fall exactly like they would on Earth. Where's the low gravity effect? Why aren't the particles falling in slow motion? Has the moon secretly changed its physical laws when no one was looking? But NASA wasn't done yet. They added one more dramatic flourish. The release of a research sensor. It's launched using a pneumatic system, flies upward, trailing a little info ribbon. And what do we see? The object moves along a curved trajectory, just like on Earth. Not even a hint of a difference. So, step by step, we're not just watching a mission. We're watching a masterclass in lowering the audience's expectations of physics. The moon, gravity, atmosphere. All just minor details, easily tweaked when you know no one's really going to ask. Blue Ghost, mission accomplished, video released. And the questions just kept piling up, because when even the animation doesn't follow basic physics, maybe the problem isn't with the audience, but with the people behind the scenes. So when you watch the quote-unquote video feeds of space missions, ask yourself questions. How was it filmed? Where is the camera positioned? Why do light, dust, and movement behave so differently in space than expected? Because if the footage looks too perfect, if the camera work feels a little too polished, chances are you're watching a well-rendered 3D clip. In the era of CGI and VFX, anything can be created. But the one thing we shouldn't forget is real physics. Thank you for watching this video to the end. Stay with us. It will be interesting.